Yeah, there has been kind of like a revival movement recently, like of like PS1 era horror games. And I think at some point there definitely will be somebody who wants to fill a void of this specific style of like stopping and shooting. Because like obviously there's plenty of people who have called it dated because, you know, it's weird and kind of different. And obviously it feels a lot better in modern shooters when you can move around more freely. But there is something extremely cool and unique to the way that RE4 and RE5 play. I also think it's very approachable. Because you can kind of take your time and aim, because it doesn't expect you to be able to aim on the fly so much. Me personally, I feel like it was pretty much the only shooter I could play for a while, and it's probably a lot of the reason the game even got as popular as it did. What would be some shooters you think one could recommend to someone who's very not good at shooters? Yeah, RE4 is a pretty easy answer. I think another thing about RE4 too is that the melee system in it, the fact that you can't... Ooh. The fact that you can melee at all, and the fact that it also makes you invincible, it makes you feel like you're not even always playing a shooter. You're almost playing like a weird, arcadey action game. And yeah, Splatoon, definitely. Because Splatoon... Splatoon is almost very specific... no, I guess I have plenty of flash grenades, I'll just... Splatoon is almost very specifically designed for your... Aiming at certain targets is very important, but you actually don't necessarily need to, which I think is cool. Like, the main mode of the game, like you're just splatting on the ground. The entire point is that you can shoot anywhere willy-nilly and it doesn't matter. So, somebody who isn't good at shooters can be like, yes, I actually am unironically helping. Oh yeah, Fallout. That's what I was gonna say. Fallout, because the shooting is lame, but then also, if you don't want to shoot, you don't even need to. You can be like, I don't trust my shooting, let me use the thing that shoots for me. Grand Theft Auto, that's true. And again, I think that might even be part because Grand Theft Auto is another game where, like... Woo! Wowee! The shooting is almost like secondary or tertiary to like the like everything else in the game, like the exploration, the silliness of it. I'm trying to think of other shooters. I guess Halo presumably is, because it's like, I mean, half the reason it's so well known is because so many people have played it, so I have to assume it's got to be pretty beginner friendly. And I know like the AI in that game and stuff scales like a ton. Oh yeah, and it has the what's it called? The way the health system works is a super beginner friendly thing. Because if you've taken too much damage, you can just zip away, hide behind a corner, and like not have any consequences to your actions. Which obviously gets way harder on the harder difficulties, but like on the easier difficulties, you can just be like, "Oh, okay, did my damage, run away now." The targets in Halo are just fun. I think that's probably the biggest compliment I can give the entire series. They have really, really, really well... Oh my god, you're right! I didn't even think about that. Fucking Halo has co-op. I definitely have a history of being a pretty big baby when it comes to... I guess just video games in general, but... I think I talked about last time how I've just kind of gotten a lot better about that. The history goes as far back as, like... When I first played Banjo-Tooie of all games, there's parts of the games that are like first-person shooter sections because Rare made it and they had their, you know, their perfect dark GoldenEye engine and they basically just shoehorned it into Banjo-Tooie. But I was so scared of just the first-person perspective at all that those parts used to scare me a lot.
Oh, that's interesting. I know the weird thing that I would be scared of, and this isn't actually that weird, a lot of people had this similar fright.
Yeah.
I remember playing this at a friend's house. Tomb Raider. I think it's Tomb Raider.
Oh, yeah. Like the old ones.
2?
They're like weirdly quiet games. I never really played them, but
Okay, so in Tomb Raider 2, you can walk around your mansion. It kind of acts as a tutorial and just a general place to explore, you know?
yeah.
Um, but the thing that's scary about it is you're right. It is very quiet. There's no music. All you hear is Laura running.
Yeah.
But then what you'll hear is like this kind of shivering and like slow stepping. And you have this old butler who will just follow you around, right?
Shepard just said Winston.
He doesn't.
I'm guessing that's his name.
Yeah, that's the guy. What people would do is they would take him and lock him in the freezer, just so that he would stop following you around.
That's funny.
Other than that, I was very sensitive towards zombies
Interesting.
for a while.
I think for me, it was
true.
really just a... Oh, you can probably put the emerald in that, I'm guessing. Yeah, I don't know what it was. Something about first-person games, like when I was really young. I was just so scared of not being able to see around me. Which is, I think...
I can get that.
Yeah.
It does make sense if you kind of like hyper logic into it, you know? Like
Oh,
because when you're in first person view, you're alone, you know?
Yeah.
Like the arm that you see holding your gun is not giving you any comfort, you know?
Well,
Just
I think it
you.
even extended to like even my first play, or the first time. I shouldn't even say my first playthrough. The first time I ever tried picking up Resident Evil 4, because you hear them yell off camera, and I'm like, I don't know where you are. I'm freaking out. Like that's like more than enough to get me freaking out. And actually, I'm gonna tangent for a second because I just remembered what probably scarred me for life in the first place. When it comes to that stuff, have you ever played the Toy Story game for SNES? There is one level that is a Mode 7 first-person shooter segment.
Ooh.
That's way more ominous than it has any right to be. There's no enemies or anything. You're just in this extremely cramped...
Hello?
And then randomly, Buzz will just do that. Or not Buzz, Woody will just do that, where he'll just say hello. And then when you pick up one of these guys, they're staring at you the entire time.
Yeah, that
and then you put them away, and they make that horrible sound. And this used to scare the shit out of me as a kid. And it probably scarred me for first-person games in general. I was messing around a second ago, because for some reason my, like, gyro aiming got all messed up. Like, I had it all set up perfectly, and then it, like, reset to my default. That, like, where the sensitivity was way higher, so in my last stream it was all messed up. So before the stream I was messing around with it to set it back up, and now it feels, like, super good, and I can aim at everything really well.
Oh, satisfying.
Pop. 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 Yeah, that
Jesus,
felt good.
that is beautiful. The TF2 sniper would be proud. Oh my god.
So anyway, I fixed the gyro controls. I remember one of the scariest moments I had when I used to kind of live off of an external is I was over at my friend's house with my laptop at one point, and I was just being stupid with it. Like, I was so used to having it, like, plugged in, like, kind of, like, cradled on my laptop, that, you know, I had never really dropped it or anything before, so I was like, whatever, I'll just kind of always have it plugged into the side. Yeah, I dropped it, and I got real scared real fast.
That's definitely scary. Did it survive?
Yes. But it is probably the most panicked that a group of my friends has ever seen me before. My history flashed before my eyes.
Yeah. It's kind of, it's just kind of scary, because, like, back in the old days, right? Like, people wouldn't have, like, computers and shit. They'd have, you know, photo books, right?
Yeah.
And that'd be like, if you had a house fire or something, that'd be like the one thing like people would try to rescue, besides their immediate like alive family members, is the
Yeah.
photo books, because you couldn't get those back. And I feel like, you know, hard drives could be essentially that for the modern day.
Yeah. I mean, data is just one of those annoying things where unless you have, like, just a trillion redundancies that you're always on top of updating all the time,
Yeah.
you're just kind of like, there's just no perfect solution.
Yeah. And if you have like ADHD like me, it becomes even worse, because now it's just like
Oh,
you have
whoa,
files
you didn't get
fucking
stunned again.
everywhere.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, I think I've only had one major hard drive loss in my life. Or maybe it was like before I had external hard drive, so it was just everything was on like a super old computer. And then I lost it. I actually don't remember exactly what happened. It happened once, it happened pretty early on, but unfortunately it was a lot of stuff that I wish I still had to this day. Like ancient pixel art that I used to make, and like ancient game maker projects, some of which I remember being like kind of proud of. Like they weren't anything special, obviously, like I didn't upload them online. Wasn't that proud of them, but like I had fun making them. And I haven't really invested my time too much into stuff like Game Maker nowadays, so like to have at least those cool little silly projects that I grew up with would be awesome.
If you're lucky, maybe one of our friends might have some of the files, because I know some of our friends helped out with like making stuff, right?
It was so long ago that there's one friend that would have helped with it, and I've actually already talked to them a bunch about that. He was able to find a bunch of my old pixel art and stuff, so that was super cool. Because we're talking like grade school, which is like before I met most of the friends that you know.
Yeah.
We used to do a lot of pixel art together, and he at this point actually is like, I don't know how many professional projects he's worked on, but I know that he like is at that level of like, occasionally he has done like more professional projects and like been commissioned to work on like indie games and stuff. And just his work.
That's pretty nice.
Yeah.
I need
a little peek into if I actually kept up with it.
I'm lucky in that I think I did a good job of like at least creating redundancies and saving most of my shit from middle school, at least. I don't remember saving much from elementary school.
I probably didn't have much outside of that, because my music collection, like I've talked about before, I would keep that on external devices, you know, like MP3 players anyway. So even if I lost all my old files, there's no way I would lose that. And I can't really think of what else I really would have had. I'm sure there's the occasional silly thing floating around my computer from back in the day. But the worst of it was definitely losing those Game Maker projects, because it's just... God, I wish I still had those. I vividly remember every single one of them.
Oh, that's so upsetting.
Yeah.
Well, it is what it is.
Yeah. Ooh, allergies acting up. 1 second.
Oh, you doing a big sneeze?
No. Eyes watering. If I was smart, I would take some allergy medicine.
That's for smart people. You don't need to do that.
You have allergies too? Yeah, me, my allergies aren't usually anything too crazy. Like, I know some people just die, like, in the spring. Like, some people are, like, can barely even go a day without getting a migraine. With how bad, like, their headaches get and how sniffly their nose gets and everything. I've never been in that bad of a spot. I just kind of get, like, the sniffles from time to time at its worst. And I have, like, some pretty normal allergies. Whoa, there's a second one. I have had one extremely weird running issue for a long time now. Where, basically, I can't figure out what the allergy is. And I even went to an allergist for it and didn't really get any answer for it. Where any drinks that are, like, kinda sorta healthy... Like... Or, like, they, you know, they're like those, like, very sugary drinks that still kind of bill themselves as being healthy drinks, like Sobe and things like that. There is something in those general types of drinks that I'm allergic to, like the like I feel my throat starting to close kind of allergic.
Ooh, that's
And it's the
scary.
only thing I've ever been like that towards, and it's not a consistent thing on the ingredients list of any drinks like that. It's kind of a, like, I don't know how to describe exactly what I'm talking about with those kind of drinks, but like, it's kind of just a vibe check. Like the Celsius energy drinks, that's another one. I can't drink those because they have whatever that ingredient is in it. And I went to an allergist about it because I remember going to an allergist when I was like a really young kid, and I think it's just because my mom was curious. So I was like, I'm an adult. I can just go to an allergist myself and maybe figure this out because I'm curious. And it was a complete waste of time. We basically like
Did they do the pokes?
they did the pokes and didn't get any answer that way. And then the only other solution that they had to possibly fixing the issue was doing exactly what I did, which was comparing the ingredient. But it was definitely presented to me in a pretty like insulting way, as if I didn't already check that. Where I was like I brought, you know, I brought up the two examples and then was like, yeah, I mean, here are the ingredients list for both of them. And they were like, yeah, I mean, I don't see anything like that's the same in them. And I'm like, yeah, neither do I. That's why that's why I'm here. Like, is that all you got? I guess I just don't know what I'm allergic to. The last couple days was a lot of me and my partner kind of like spring cleaning. The house feels a heck of a lot better, and that's nice.
Do most people do spring cleaning like in April, or is that just a? Because I'm doing it as well, right?
Yeah.
So I wonder if that's just like a coincidence that comes from like spring just starting, or if like April is like designated spring cleaning month for most people.
I think it's a little bit of both. Last move I threw out some 200 pounds worth of crap. Yeah, I remember
Nice.
something that'll kind of always stick with me when it comes to like moving and like, you know, just like the act of moving in general is when I was in my childhood house, like I just had so much random stuff that felt like it was really important to keep just because it was like the same room that I had been in for like a billion years. Woo, right. And you know, even just stuff like random Nintendo Power posters for games I didn't care about, where I was like, well, it's at least a poster, so I should probably keep it on my wall, or like random crap under my bed and stuff like that. And then the first time that I ever moved into a place that wasn't my childhood house, I was like, I just straight up didn't need like any of that. And now I have perfect tabs on everything I have with me, and it just feels good. And I've generally tried to keep that momentum from move to move, although, you know, not perfect. But yeah, on the note that you were saying earlier, I assume, like, there are definitely, like Whimsy said a second ago, there are definitely some towns that will coordinate around the spring as far as spring cleaning goes. So, like, our town is actually, like, they just started doing, like, lawn pickup stuff this week. Like, lawn trash pickup. But also, I think it's definitely just, like, a human brain, like, it's nice out, I want to be outside, I want to start doing the things that I need to do. And then it's just kind of satisfying to, you know, it does a lot for the brain at once to clean and get outside again after it being horrible for a little while. Oh, you're still alive. I feel like another thing with the spring cleaning too is that I assume like most people probably have maybe not full on like seasonal depression, but like everyone just kind of feels crummy when it's extra cold out. Except for the gifted few that feel good for some reason when it's cold out, which is not me. It just, like, inherently feels pretty crummy to be stuck inside all the time. And outside the air hurts, so that just kind of sucks. I have met a small handful of people that have more of a seasonal depression in the summer, just because they really, really hate being hot. But that is not me. If I can help it, I'd pretty much always wear, like, the loosest clothes that I could. Yeah, much more of a transitional sad person, hence why I live in Texas. Yeah, I've been torn on the idea of moving away from where I currently live. Because I feel like I would genuinely be a lot happier in a place that is just the place that I live in right now. I know I've mentioned this like a few times, but like we have the 4 seasons here pretty intensely. And I think at this point in my life especially, I would be like almost a little fucked up by the fact that I didn't have the 4 seasons to pace out the year in my head. Like, I think I would perceive time differently in a way that would be, like, almost weird and upsetting. Like, if the summer was just forever. Like, my brain would be like, well, where's winter? Has a year even passed yet? Yeah, I remember, for a little while, my older brother lived in Vegas, like, actually pretty close to the Strip. Also, I have no idea what I'm doing. I do not remember this ornate sword puzzle or, like, where I'm bringing it. And yeah, he said that, like, there was a time during the year where the nights would get really cold.
Yes.
One thing I remember interesting that he mentioned, too, is between the way that the desert is out there, where the land is all really flat, and the fact that it's so hot during most of the year, it's not only, like, borderline required to have a pool if you live there, but also it's a lot cheaper. Like, probably, you know, somewhat more reasonable for the average person cheaper.
Lewis.
Yeah, it definitely tracks.
As opposed to around where we live, where not only do you have to turn it off for half the year, which is like a whole crazy amount of maintenance that you have to do for it, but also, like, depending on where you live, you might have to blast like 80 tons of rocks out of your backyard because they're just below the surface of your yard. Like,
I have a buddy who lives in Vegas, and he talks about how like sometimes the heat can get so intense that
Let's just leave it at that.
like your shoes will like melt if you're
Oh, that's so
like
creepy.
walking around outside long enough.
It said because animal paws burn really easily. It takes, yeah, that's something that's like even still an issue around where I live, where the summers only really push like 80 on your average day, because that's still a lot to stand on. But I can't even imagine what you would do with a pet in weather like that, short of giving them the cute little boots, which, you know, that's not the worst thing ever. Yeah, what's wrong with giving your animals cute little boots? Short of how much they may or may not hate wearing cute little boots. Oh yeah, I'll wear cute little boots. God, I don't know, I just like... I've always loved this gameplay style so much that it's hard to understand why it's so hated by so many people. I wonder what game does telekinesis best. I'm yet to find anything that, at least on like a core fundamental level, that I like more than this game. Which is frustrating because it's Sonic 06. God, I forget what it was called. I remember there was some first-person shooter that I played ages ago that was like a competitive shooter that like had telekinesis as its main gimmick. BioShock had the telekinesis.
I'm not going to let the
What's it
English
called?
trigger get away.
Plasmid. That's what. Whoops. First-person shooter with telekinesis. Yeah, it was like I think it was like an arena fighter type thing too. What was that other game? Oh yeah. So one of the few Final Fantasy games that I played, which I would like to play on stream sometime, but I think the emulation for the game isn't great. Where there is a third-person action Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles game that I originally played because I was like, oh, I want to play a Crystal Chronicles game. I liked the original one growing up a ton. I'd probably love to play this one too. So I'll just get the newest one in the series because it's probably just better. Then it turned out to be this crazy telekinesis-based action game where you like use the Wiimote to grab onto enemies and like twist them around and throw them and stuff. Or like if it was like an enemy that had like, sometimes the enemies would have like powers attached to them. Cell Factor, that might be it. After this stage I'll take like a short break and I'll look up that in the Final Fantasy game I'm talking about. Was this it? The name rings a bell. Yeah. Okay, I think this was it. Because I remember you being able to fucking whip stuff around like that. Okay, this actually looks fucking cool. Is this on Steam? I might look into it at some point. This looks like it could be a lot of fun. Here we go. Okay, gameplay. Jesus. It's like slow, which I think was my main issue with it. But it was really satisfying to play with the Wiimote, because it was like focus on something and then you swing the Wiimote in the direction you want. Like I think if you swing it up towards you is how you lift it over your head. And then it's like either left, right, up, down. You can hold them and like if they it's like they spray out fire, you get like their fire attack. It's just like a lot of cool ideas. But it was not at all what I was expecting when I went to play this game. But it's usually what comes to mind when I think of like games that have telekinetic gameplay. Because there's not many that strictly focus on it like that. But I think that's why I give so much praise to Silver's gameplay too, is just because it feels like it has all those concepts, but just like
a laboratory like this
nailed a bit smoother.
Soliana?
I actually forget if Psychonauts 2... I feel like Psychonauts 2 did Telekinesis better, but I forget how they did it. Because the first Psychonauts game, it was terrible. It was like you stayed in place, and then like this hand picked up something that also stayed in place, and then you like launched it like it was a sports game. Like it was very odd. Pretty fun these days. What game did I come from? I came from Smash. So... a lot of just kind of throwing out the single moves that matter, and like moving around in the subtle ways that matter. Not that I was ever perfect at it. If anything, I feel like I got a lot better at doing that after I started playing BlazBlue more. But I at least already had that sense of like weaving in and out. That is basically like most of what Smash is about. Or yeah, Smash Ultimate, I should say. I didn't really play much Melee. Technically, it came from Smash 4, but you know. Let's just say I came from it. I have spent some time with Strive, and I do like it a lot for different reasons than BlazBlue. But ultimately, the thing that I like a lot more about BlazBlue is just how the system mechanics work. Like things like the meters and like the bursts and all that stuff. It just feels like it's balanced so perfectly, and I just like the way that Strive does it in this. And there is like some fun stuff that comes out of the way that they handle their mechanics, but I don't know. BlazBlue matches just feel like so perfectly paced out. And it just kind of feels like it's like the same but different in ways that I don't like quite as much. And then Street Fighter I basically never played. I messed around with it a little bit when like sometime this past year Street Fighter 5 went on sale for $5. And I just got like a handful of friends to buy it so we can mess around with it with each other. And I thought I was doing pretty okay in it. And then I faced my one friend who's like actually pretty okay at Street Fighter, and I couldn't touch him. So I'm like, okay, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. Also played the first and second Injustice games, mostly because I'm a big fan of DC. Yeah, I was talking about those earlier. I didn't really get super deep with them, but I played them a little bit just because... I don't know, I'm not usually a fan of the more, like, grounded fighting games, like Street Fighter and stuff, where, like, anime games there's a lot more, like, flipping around, moving around, really crazy, wild attacks, and usually games like Street Fighter and even Mortal Kombat, to an extent, aren't usually really like that, so I have a bit less fun with them. Like, there's just kind of less going on that I care about. But Injustice was probably the closest I've gotten to feeling like an in-between on that, where it was made by the Mortal Kombat people, so it has a lot of the Mortal Kombat stuff that I don't love. But also, I mean, it's superheroes, so just much wackier stuff is going on in general. Is this my favorite fighting game? It's... I want to say probably, because, like, in the bigger picture of my life, Smash, like, basically the entire series, but especially the newer games where I've, like, actually gone to tournaments and stuff for them, I've definitely had a much, much, much larger influence on my life. But BlazBlue as a game, I just think is like such a perfectly well-rounded fighting game. that I just kind of appreciate it more as a game. Played some Smash, I'm terrible at it, but it's so much fun to local co-op. Yeah, I mean, that's the cool thing about Smash. It's like a pretty perfect, like, gateway into that kind of thing, if it's something that ends up clicking with you. Like, for some people, they have their fun with Smash. It's not hard to have fun with Smash, because they give, you know, there's so many characters. And it's very fun to just have, like, a good time, even just on a surface level, of, like, seeing all the characters being cool and stuff. And it's not necessarily hard to, like, control them. There's not all these, like, crazy combos and stuff you normally have to worry about just to, like, do well. But if your brain picks up on it, you can be like, I think there's something a little deeper going on here. And whereas, like, traditional fighters like this might have been, like, really overwhelming to get into, something like Smash, you can kind of just take all of that base level knowledge you know just from messing around with the game, because everybody's messed around with Smash at least on a casual level. And you can just apply that to learning the much deeper stuff. BlazBlue is definitely one of my biggest steps in, like, getting kind of deeper with fighting games, because as of the second game, they have a like a trial mode, which is a way more common nowadays, but at the time was a brand new thing, where it just, like, throws combos at you. And it was the first time that I was like, oh shit, I'm, like, stringing moves together and doing things. I didn't know how to apply them in a practical way, but I was like, holy shit, I'm, like, learning. I played BlazBlue because me and my brother played a lot of XX. Yeah, no, then that's cool. I, like, wish I grew up more. Guilty Gear. I technically got into Guilty Gear as, like, and you might even remember this, because this is around the time that I met you, where, like, I basically downloaded Guilty Gear XX for PC, because BlazBlue either wasn't for PC at the time, or my computer couldn't run it. So it very much felt like my budget PC way to play BlazBlue before I owned a way to play BlazBlue. But at the same time, I don't know, I had trouble appreciating it for its own thing, mostly because of, like, I wasn't particularly smart with fighting games, so I didn't really know, like, anything deeper to pay attention to, so I was just kind of like, this just feels like BlazBlue but weird. But it was still enough to get me exposed to it, so I'm glad that glad that I did it. I did not play multiplayer games for a very long time, like growing up or whatever. And a lot of that was just because online environments always used to scare the hell out of me, because my experience with it was like, so I'd hear people's horror stories of, like, playing, like, first-person shooters online and getting, like, slurred at for an entire evening. And because it was the 2000s, probably slurring back at them, if I were to guess. But it, like, I don't know, it just always turned me off from ever playing games with people, because I think the only times I'd ever try, voice chat would be on, and, like, I would do something kind of bad, and then they would call me an idiot, and then I would be like, okay, I guess I don't know what I'm doing, maybe I shouldn't play online yet, and then I just never played online. But fighting game communities are just so cool about just wanting to teach people how to play the game. Which goes double for if you can go to in-person events. Like, that's not always practical for everyone, just based on, like, location. Like, I'm super lucky being as close as I am to Boston, that I can go to Boston tournaments. But not everybody is that close to something like that. But thankfully, even, like Discord communities for games are, like, almost always full of, like, really amazing people that just want more people to know how to play the game. Yeah, playing League scared me from playing other games online for a bit. Exactly, yeah, I mean, even, like, regardless of their online experience, like, anytime my friends would play League with each other, they'd be, like, super mad at each other. And I'd be like, why would I even want to play with you guys, let alone with people online? I forget if I found out about, like, BlazBlue and Guilty Gear for the music first, because there's definitely a ton of games that I've played just because I was either recommended the soundtrack or, like, found it randomly on its own. But what I actually am pretty sure happened was that a friend of mine had the PSP version of the first BlazBlue game on his PSP Go, if you remember that. It was the PSP where you could only download games to it. But, like, in 2008, when downloading games wasn't common, and, like, 2 games took up the entirety of the thing's storage. what's it called? I don't know. I just like thought it was kind of neat, and then somehow I ended up getting it on my own and getting really into the single player stuff. But I think what finally got me into it is that I think it was at the time I just had an Xbox 360, and I realized that the game was for Xbox 360, and I was like, oh, huh, I remember having fun with that on my friend's PSP. Maybe I'll actually buy it. And that was like around when it came out, too. And I had never played Guilty Gear before, which is their other big series that's been around for a lot longer. So I didn't have any history with the company or anything. I was just kind of like, oh, this game's kind of neat. And then just after that, it was just, I don't know, it was a part of my life. I got pretty hooked into the story from the first game, and just like the vibes of the game and the characters. And even as somebody who was very casual of fighting games at the time, I just had a lot of fun playing it regardless. But I remember even like, I had like a friend or two that were like, or actually I've had the friend on before when I was playing Bayonetta, where like he's like the type of person that like, maybe he doesn't play every game ever, but he's an absolute fiend when it comes to like video game lore. So when I was playing the game and getting into the story and stuff, like he started doing like the wiki deep dives on the story, and he was absolutely fascinated by it. So like, even though he's not a fighting game person literally at all, we ended up kind of following the story together, because he would like do a bunch of research into like the crazy stuff in the story. And then when the third game came out, I remember we made it like an event to play through everything together. I do remember though, something that like absolutely sucked about my experience with the BlazBlue story is that the ending of the final game, like this game, is obviously like super dramatic, because there's 4 or 3 games worth of build up to it, and there's a lot of really, really big stuff that happened in it. And like, I was having an emotional time getting to the end of the story, like as I was playing through it. And then out of nowhere, my roommate comes home drunk with like 8 friends, and they all just like infest the living room that I'm playing in while I'm trying to like practically holding back tears from everything that's happening at the end of the game. It's not like I didn't like still enjoy my time with the end of the story, but it was like, come on. Possibly one of the worst ways to end out a story like that. How did I end up on Hibiki? Honestly, there is a bit of a story behind that. So like, I came originally from playing Smash. Like, I played a lot of Smash 4 and Smash Ultimate. Didn't end up getting too much into Melee, but mostly just because I didn't really have too many friends who played it. And I've been playing BlazBlue casually since the game series like kind of first came out. But I never quite understood how to be like a competitive fighting game person. So I was just kind of like hitting buttons, and at the time I played a lot of Remixes, just because I really liked what he did as a character. But then I got a roommate who's very, very active in the local BlazBlue scene, and it was like, I think that's actually how we met. I think a mutual friend of ours was like, hey, you're the 2 people I know that know what BlazBlue is, you guys should like be friends. And then eventually we became roommates. And when the lockdowns first started, it was just kind of fun. Like, he was working from home, so we would like, he was just home all the time, and BlazBlue at the time didn't have netcode, at least not at first. And I just kind of decided, like, if I was gonna take the deep dive on learning a new game like that, that I should play somebody way more normal. Somebody who's just kind of like all about throwing out normal buttons at normal ranges instead of having this crazy like weaving in and out of his frame data thing that Relius does, which I love. Like, I just think characters like that are cool, and I can still play as them a little bit. Maybe I'll actually switch up to him next round just to mix things up a little bit. But Hibiki, I think, helped teach me the game a lot more, as far as just normal fundamentals of how you're supposed to space yourself out in 2D fighters and such. How you're supposed to block, how you're supposed to combo. Because BlazBlue has this habit of half of the characters having their own unique answers to normal fighting game things, for better or worse. What fighting games do you recommend for a newbie on PC? Well, I would have said Smash. Smash, I think, is honestly one of the most approachable fighting games for a lot of reasons. Which, unfortunately, part of that is that it basically plays nothing like a normal fighting game. But all of like the core competitive concepts are still there, and it's just so much easier to. It's so much easier to control to the average person that like it's hard not to recommend it as an entry point. Gosh, beginner-friendly fighting games. A lot of people definitely recommend Street Fighter because it's such like a fundamental-based game. The big thing with Street Fighter, the way the characters move around and punch and stuff is very simple. And it really teaches you the fundamentals of fighting games where you're just kind of like... it teaches you the subtleties of how you're kind of supposed to like inch around and move around each other in a way that can be extremely valuable and easy to transfer to any fighting game that you want to play. But I'm just personally not a fan of them just because they're like, I like moving around a lot in my fighting games, and there's not a lot of that, unfortunately, in Street Fighter. Getting a controller that works for you it's a weird thing, because it can be actually kind of an annoying barrier with fighting games. It like is and isn't a barrier with fighting games, because it's annoying to say that you should have to buy a really specific controller to play a game. Because, like, you don't. Like, you can actually totally make do with a random controller that maybe isn't, like, as fantastic as ones that are specifically designed to play fighting games with. And there are plenty of people who do amazing stuff with, like, the stock console controller. But I would be lying if I didn't have a huge problem with misinputs before I just happened to get the controller that, like, did things really well for me. And, like, to some people, that's, like, the fight sticks, the, what's it called? The hitboxes are really popular now. By the way, some time ago, someone asked what a good fighting game to start with is IMO, pick whatever you want and end up playing, no matter if it's... Yeah, so that was actually something I almost meant to say. Especially because earlier they said something about, what's it called? Injustice. Like, they played Injustice because they were, like, a big fan of DC and stuff. Liking the characters and the vibe of a game is, like, absolutely more than enough of a good reason to play a game. Like, the reason I played Pac-Man in Smash is because they announced Pac-Man for Smash, and I was like, aw, Pac-Man. I like Pac-Man. And then I fucking played Pac-Man, even though he was absolutely terrible in Smash 4. Like, that should be your philosophy for, like, what game you pick, what character you pick. Like, all of that is, like, a totally reasonable reason to play any game. Because sometimes you just need, like, more motivation than just playing a fighting game for playing a fighting game's sake. And doing something like that, where you're playing a fighting game just because you like the vibes of the game or the characters of the game or whatever. Like, if that's what gets you into playing a game... oh yeah, and like they said right afterwards, you will find people who are new and have fun picking it up. Yeah, like, you can either make a point to see if any of your other friends want to play, or, like, your worst case scenario is that there is always, like, a Discord for the game or something like that. Fighting game players are very sure. I will train you until you're strong enough to beat me. Yes, exactly. I cannot count the amount of times after a tournament set, especially in Smash, because Pac-Man's, like, a pretty uncommon character, because a lot of people consider him, like, kind of hard to play as, or at least weird to play as. Just how many times, like, after I would do, like, a bracket match, and I would just kind of be like... Or they would ask me, like, a ton of questions, because it'd be like, what the fuck was that fruit thing? What was that hydrant thing? That kills this way? Like, how does your grab work? Like, there's just so many weird questions to ask Pac-Man specifically. And I was always happy to help because, you know, the best case scenario, they use that knowledge, they go out of state with it, and they, like, do something with it, like, bigger than just our local events. And also, it means that I have something more interesting to face the next time I face that person. Because it's not exactly fun always facing people that have no idea what they're doing against you. It can be fun to teach people, but obviously you're there to, like, play the game. Finding characters I am is more important than even finding local scheme. Yeah, no, absolutely. Because it's very much like a what's it called? There's just so many ways that they end up feeling like an extension of yourself that even having, like, the most superficial reasons to get attached to a character is, like, fine. And you notice like a lot of people who are, like, trying to approach fighting games just from the competitive mindset get this weird burnout, like, almost entitled feeling, if I'm going to use, like, kind of a loaded term, where like people are just like, I'm gonna get into the competitive side because I want to win. I'm gonna pick the top tier character. Why aren't I winning? Like unless like their only motivation to play is literally just getting better, like just for the sake of getting better, then maybe that's enough to carry them. But for a lot of people, it's really not. And in Smash, you would see that a ton because obviously there's just so many people who are into the game.
Oh, here's some random news for you, by the way.
What's that?
Sonic Frontiers hit 3.5 million units sold, surpassing Heroes as the best-selling 3D Sonic title.
God, I forgot that Heroes was the best-selling 3D Sonic title. That's weird.
And isn't there, like, no Marn ports of it, too?
Yeah, no. There is a PC version, but it's, like, abandonware, so...
It's interesting, too, because I'm looking at the Wikipedia page here, and it says it was the Mega Man 11 was the highest-selling
Mega Man game.
Yeah,
that's always so weird. I feel like sometimes I go end up getting like sidelined back and forth, or like sometimes I'm like, yeah, I think that's just like a byproduct of just gaming becoming a heck of a lot more popular in the modern era. So like, of course, it sold more. But then sometimes I forget that like there are some games that came out in the 90s that are still the best-selling games in their franchise. Like, I want to say Pokemon Red and Blue. Unless it got surpassed by Sword and Shield, I actually don't remember. I think Pokemon Red and Blue is the best-selling Pokemon game still to this day. Which is just kind of like, that feels so weird, because Pokemon feels like it got so much bigger, but I guess they've just objectively sold nowhere near as much, despite how much time has passed. And how much more awareness there is of the brand and the games and everything. But yeah, one thing that's actually worth mentioning with the soundtrack of this game is actually a remix album of the entirety of the game. That just turns them into just bigger, significantly more well-produced songs that sound fantastic. And are just kind of perfect remixes across the board. Remaking video game music is kind of weird. Because, like, I feel like, you know, especially when they do, like, remake games and stuff, or, like, remix albums or whatever, there's this kind of trap of, like, actually remaking the song and balancing it so it actually has, like, the spirit of the original song. Because, like, they can take the song and just, you know, say it was from, like, a Game Boy Advance game or DS game or something where, like, the instruments are pretty crunchy. And, like, you can just take that and update it with newer instruments that are clearer, but like sometimes that will like take away a lot of personality from the original songs, and that always kind of sucks. But then also you can like remake a song and give it a ton of personality, and it sounds fantastic, but it doesn't really give you enough of like the same vibes of the original song. And there are some golden soundtracks, or even at least just songs out there that like strike the perfect balance of actually capturing the spirit of the original songs well enough that I don't know. Anytime I hear a remix song like that, or like an entire remix album like that, where I can enjoy everything, it just means a lot to me, because it's like, oh, you like cared about this song, you like knew what was special about it, you didn't just like plop new instruments onto it or just make whatever the heck you wanted.
Is this like one of those games where even in the medium difficulty, it's just kind of like you can't take that many hits?
Yeah. Well, I think I can also like upgrade my health somehow, but it's one of those things where at this point I just have some brain worms when it comes to most like platformer type games, or like, you know, most action games. They'll usually give you a bunch of tools and stuff to kind of give you a helping hand as far as like, you know, with this you can do more attacks or do more of this, that, the other thing. Like in Mega Man, it's like, you know, at least the older Mega Man games, the less prominent in this one, but it would be like, use your, use the boss's weaknesses against them and you do way more damage. Or find all the health upgrades so you can take way more hits. And like, I just have like a habit of like ignoring those at this point.
Yeah,
or like healing
definitely
items
fair.
and stuff. Like where Devil May Cry kind of conditioned me out of using them, because whenever you use them, you lose your rank points a little bit. So I was like, fine, I won't use them.
That's definitely fair. It depends on the game for me. Some games it's kind of a requirement.
Yeah.
But
I think for me, most of the reason I'll use them is if it's something that's giving me more fun options. I guess is the big thing. Like usually the whole thing with like the Mega Man weakness or Mega Man boss weaknesses is like it either A makes the boss fight shorter, which is just like cool. I guess I just get to experience this boss fight for less instead of exploring it inside and out. And 2, a lot of times it'll even just completely stun lock the bosses, so you basically don't have to face them at all. And at that point, it's just like, eh. I don't know how to promote him anymore. He's already a mod in both the streams and the servers, and is also on almost every single... Well, not almost every single one of those streams, but a lot of them.
Saying I should take over.
Yeah.
just make my icon bigger.
Yeah.
Reduce the height difference. Right. I feel insecure about it.
There you go. I gave you a promotion.
Wowee. I'm a big boy now.
Minigames, if one, provide regions for advanced crafting quests. I think part of the reason that I've always had trouble getting into MMOs is always because it's like always so many little things to like stay on top of with that stuff. Like little things you can craft, little quests you can do, and my brain just like turns it all to mush sometimes. Fortunately, it doesn't force crafting on you early, but it def has a lot of activities to get into that can get overwhelming for sure. Yeah, it's an MMO thing, and I get it. It's like mostly a good thing if you're like diving deep into these kind of games. Yeah, the types of games that I usually play that come like when it comes to like big time investment kind of games tends to be fighting games, where like the time investment mostly just comes with sitting with the same thing for a long time, and that's all you have to really pay attention to.
Yeah.
And a lot of like both MMOs and mobile games. Mobile games get so much worse, where they just kind of throw like a bunch of stuff at you.
Yeah, it gets really aggressive, because sometimes I'll kind of like the vibe of an app game at first, but then they'll just start layering on the bullshit so fast I can't even keep track of the game anymore.
Yeah.